In this video, we're talking about the best CPU and GPU combinations for video editing, and specifically inside of laptops. Now, this is for somebody really on any budget. We're going to talk about laptops around the $550 range all the way up to about $4,200. So no matter where you are in that landscape, this is the right video for you. If you're curious about the exact models and recommendations as we're going through the video, you can head down into the description below and click one of those links. Now, if you do use that link, I will get a small commission, but at no extra cost to you. And that's what keeps this channel alive and the helpful content coming your way. If you're new to the channel, my name is Benji Kaiser, and this is where you're going to find the best tech and tools for creative professionals. Let's dive in. First thing we're taking a look at is the different goals of these combinations. So the optimal performance matching to get the most out of video editing performance when it comes to playback, rendering, and encoding, exporting footage out of Premiere Pro and say DaVinci Resolve. Next is to get the most video editing performance when it comes to Adobe After Effects and 3D modeling. Now, restrain yourself from overspending. So by extending your budget, you won't necessarily get more performance all of the time. You want to be looking at the program you're using, the use cases that you have in mind, and that will help you make the best buying decision. If you say, hey, one day in 10 years, I might want to render 3D modeling, but you really don't plan on doing it for that long, then buy a more budget-friendly laptop now. And when you get to that point, by then there'll be newer technology, better technology, and you can make that upgrade at that point. So make sure you're buying for your use case, not for your just excitement, should we say. All right, next thing we're gonna look at is the budgets, the $400 to $600 range, the $700 to $900 range, the $1,000 to $1,800 range, $1,900 to $3,000 range, and then beyond $3,000. So these are kind of the different budgets that we are falling into. And there's a lot of opportunities, and these are different CPU and GPU combinations. All right, so now dedicated GPU versus integrated GPU. Technically, this GeForce GTX 1660 and this GeForce MX 350 are both dedicated GPUs. Now, one comes with a lot more cooling power, a lot more performance. The other one is more of just a simple chipset that sits on your motherboard inside of your laptop. So these big dedicated GPUs with the fans and cooling systems are going to be much more powerful than, say, something like an MX 350 or even like the Radeon integrated graphics. Though those are still powerful and have their own use cases, they're not going to be, the big 4K, 6K machines that you're going to be looking at if you want to do that type of work. All right, as we continue talking about that, let's talk about integrated graphics versus dedicated graphics. So this right here is the Intel Ultra HD. This is in a lot of i7, i5, i3 laptops from Intel. You'll see the Intel Ultra HD as well. That's the G1 classification. So if you see a laptop that's, for instance, let's see, I think it's the i5 10051G or 5G1, that's going to be the Intel Ultra HD G1 graphics. Let's head back on over so you can see this list again. All right, you're going to see the Intel Iris Plus. That's the G7. So again, that's a pretty solid graphics coprocessor inside of a CPU. As you can see, it sits above the GeForce MX 230, which is basically a semi-dedicated GPU. But it sits below, something like the GTX 1050 Ti, the Max-Q, the 1050 Ti, the 1060, the GTX 1650. All graphics cards are going to be talking about and moving forward in this video. But you can see this is one of my favorite GPUs currently on the market. It's a good mid-range for 4K 1080p video editing. As you can see, here's where it sits, and all the way down here is where the Intel Iris G7 graphics sit, and then all the way down here is where the Intel Ultra HD, the Ultra HD 620 sits. So you can see the spread in difference between a non-GPU dedicated GPU laptop and an integrated and a dedicated GPU laptop, excuse me. So there's a big spread there. So when you're looking at a laptop that's an extra $300 to $400, and it contains one of these more dedicated GPU cards, you're going to get more performance. You're going to get much better video editing performance. And so we'll continue to talk about that. But I wanted you to see this chart. This is from laptopping.com, and the benchmarks were pulled from userbenchmark.com, which is a great resource. All right, we're gonna keep moving through here. I just really wanted to get your eyes on that so you kind of see the difference in scale. Okay, so what does a GPU do for video editing and 3D animation? So the GPU supports the CPU. By sending information from the CPU to the GPU, it's a message that says, hey, help render the footage. So that way the CPU can focus on other equally important but less graphical tasks. So playback in the timeline, which is rendering the video in the preview so you can see it smoothly as you're watching and previewing your footage in Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve. That's the GPU usage. Rendering, so actual final rendering before the video is exported. So, if you have motion graphics on your project and, you hit enter on Premiere Pro, it'll start to say rendering, and it will render out X amount of frames in X amount of time. By having a faster GPU, that process takes less time. Another thing is the GPU speeds up the process of smoothing the three-dimensional edges of your footage or animation. This was previously correct for Premiere Pro, but because of a new update, and the reason I said not exporting is because I wanted to make sure I reminded myself that it now is for exporting. There was a recent push in encoding from Premiere Pro called HEVC. I call it HVEC encoding. I'm sure I might get chastised for that, but what I consider HVEC encoding is the way that is how Adobe has now made it optimized to use the hardware for encoding, not just the software, which means that now Ryzen and Intel processors and rigs can have almost equal benchmark performance exporting out of Premiere Pro and DaVinci Resolve. That's a big movement forward for Ryzen. They had the bets curbed against them is what I'm trying to say when it came to Intel versus Ryzen for exporting out of Premiere Pro. But since that update's been pushed, we're seeing way faster export times out of Premiere Pro, and that is awesome for Ryzen users. All right, so light 1080p to video editing, this is going to be our first category. These are not going to have dedicated GPUs. These are going to have integrated graphics, and so let's jump in here. The first one right off the bat is the Lenovo V14. A great laptop, great entry-level buy for some light 1080p video editing. You're going to have the AMD Ryzen 4000 series. It's the 4500U. It's got a 2.3 base clock and a 4.0 turbo clock. You're going to have 8 gigs of RAM. And the color gamut range is okay on this laptop. It is not good by any stretch of the imagination. As you move up in price, you're going to start to see much better color gamut range. And so if you're somebody who really wants good color accuracy, you're going to have to get a higher end laptop somewhere around the $1,300 to $1,800 budget range. They do have some that are a little bit lower that have better color accuracy, but not very common. So great introduction, around $579. Estimated price, I can't post like the legit actual price that you're going to see when you go to Amazon because prices are always fluctuating, but these estimated prices are when the video was recorded, what I saw. Dell Inspiron 14. This is the i5-1035G4. So like we said from that chart, it's between the G1 and the G7. So it's kind of that lower end of the integrated graphics. What it means is these laptops are not going to have the best playback in the timeline. It's going to be somewhat slow to render, but still good laptops. So this is a base clock of 1.2 gigahertz. It has a 4-core, 8-thread processor, 3.35 turbo clock. It has 8 gigs of RAM. The color gamut range is unknown, unfortunately, for this laptop, but this is Intel's really base entry video editing laptop, in my opinion. So if you're curious about other models, keep an eye out for this processor, and you'd be pretty well suited to get into video editing. The Acer Swift 3. This is one of my favorite laptops in this category. It comes with the Ryzen 7 4700U. Very good processor. Got a 2.0 base clock, 8 cores, 8 threads with a 4.1 turbo. AMD Radeon 7 graphics, the Renoir version. And this one has pretty solid color gamut range. According to last year's model, I have not been able to get this one in the studio and test it, but last year they were seeing 99% sRGB and 64% Adobe RGB, so pretty good looking laptop in this category. It's around $650. Next, we're moving into the 1080p and light 4K video editing category, starting out with the Asus TUF FX 504. Now, we're getting into some dedicated GPUs now. So we're matching up an i5-8300H with a GTX 1050. So this is pretty solid equal comparison in performance. And really one thing I really focus on when recommending laptops with GPU, CPU combinations is the even playing field that that the CPU and the GPU fall under. This is a mid-tier GPU matched with a mid-tier CPU. So that way they equally work together. If you have too much CPU, then your GPU doesn't really benefit. If you have too much GPU, your CPU really doesn't benefit. So having them nice and leveled together is where you're gonna get optimal performance for your price point. You're not gonna be wasting money, overspending, etc. Great entry-level laptop into this category. Next up, we have the Acer Nitro 5, also touting the i5-8300H, but this one coming with the GTX 1050 Ti. You're going to get about a 15% boost in performance go ahead here, I'm looking for, there it is. You're going to get about a 15% boost in performance from the GTX 1050 to the 1050 Ti. So this is really awesome because you're going to have a slightly more expensive computer, but not by a long shot, and you'll get 15% boost in graphical performance. So that'd be playback in the timeline, rendering, etc. Let me jump back here now. So that's the Nitro 5. Great laptop, a little bit more expensive, but that Ti gives you that 15% boost in power over the Asus TUF. Next up is the Lenovo IdeaPad L340. This laptop comes with the i5-9300H and the GTX 1650 graphics processing unit. This laptop, again, is going to see a 15% boost in performance with that GTX 1650 above the 1050 Ti. So we're slowly increasing in capability as the GPUs get better performing. Now, notice that we also have the i5-9300H. So as the GPU went up in power, we brought up our processor in power. That's a newer edition of the processor. It's going to be slightly faster, going to have a little bit better clock speeds above the 8th generation version. So this laptop is one of my favorites in this list, followed up by another one to come. So this is the Lenovo IdeaPad L340. This is one of my favorite laptops in the lineup. This is the ROG Strix G. And I say ROG because I don't want to say Republic of Gamer or ROG. I got really railed on in one of my last videos for saying ROG, but it's just what I say. Okay, this has the i7-9750H processor with a GTX 1650 graphics processing unit. This is one of my favorite processors for video editing laptops. It's got a lot of performance. It doesn't give decent battery life in this laptop, but it can give decent battery life in other laptops. But it has a lot of performance, and especially masked with this GTX 1650, you're going to have a great laptop for 1080p advanced as well as some solid 4K video editing. I recommend this laptop all the time. So if you're looking for a great 6-core, 12-thread laptop with a GTX 1650, not quite my favorite GPU, but definitely my favorite processor here. And it has 16 gigs of RAM, which is my recommended base for RAM. I know a lot of people can get away with 8 gigs. They say, hey, 8 gigs is probably good enough for video editing. Personally, I think 16 because after you do all of your background processes and RAM usage that way, you usually only have about anywhere from 12 to 10 gigs of RAM left over if you're using a 16 gig RAM, dual RAM slot or single RAM. So I like 16 gigs. I just think it gives some leeway, some room, so you can have good performance. All right, next up is the Lenovo Legion 5. This is one of the new Ryzen 7 4800H processors. Comes with the GTX 1650. So if you're more of a Ryzen user, you're like, okay, that ROG or ROG Strix was pretty awesome, but I want to get into Ryzen. Well, here you go. 8 cores, 16 threads, really great price point. Comes with the GTX 1650. These are well paired processor to GPU for the price point. At the recording of this video, around $899. Okay. As you can see here, I saved these two for last, but I referenced it earlier. We saw a 15% boost in performance from the GTX 1050 to the GTX 1050 Ti. Then we saw a 17% boost in performance from the GTX 1050 Ti to the 1650. So as you see, there's about a 10 to 15% boost in performance between a lot of these GPUs. So every time you add like $100 or so to your laptop, you're going to see a boost in performance. Now you're going to see even bigger boost in performance when it comes to this 1650. And we'll talk about to the 1660 Ti. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. All right, next is the advanced 4K video editing category. So this is somebody who's going to be working on 4K projects with a lot of motion graphics, some B-roll, some audio, some background music, so on and so forth. The first one up on this list barely squeaks into the category, and I'll talk about why in a second. This is the MSI Creator 15M. The reason it squeaks in is because of the GPU. I think this is my favorite GPU. It has great performance, but it doesn't kill your budget. But it's matched with this i5-9300H. This i5-9300H has great clock speed. So look right here. You see it has a 2.4 gigahertz base clock and a 4.0 turbo clock. Let's go back to our, okay. Yep, there's our Rogue Strix G, the i7, 2.6 base, 4.0 turbo, 4.05 turbo. So that means that this does have less cores and threads, but it almost has the same clock speed. So though you're not going to have as good a multitasking with this laptop, you're going to still have great performance inside of Premiere Pro. So I'm going to explain more on the channel about like clock speeds versus cores and how that all translates into actual real world performance. So if you want that video, definitely comment below. And if it's already filmed, by the time you watch this, I'll definitely link it up in the YouTube cards above, or head on over to the channel, look for it. But that's really something you have to consider, is you're gonna have less ability to do multitasking with this, maybe not as high performing multitask, but you're gonna have a great base clock and turbo clock for inside of Premiere Pro. So this is a really great buy. It's gonna have great color accuracy. It's got the 1660 Ti. I would consider putting my money here if I had to go out and get a new laptop soon, and I was on a budget of about $1,000. So can't really say enough about this laptop, but we're going to keep moving forward so this video isn't 2 hours long. All right, now this is crazy. From the 1650 to the 1660 Ti, we're seeing roughly, now these are just rough general benchmarks, they're not, gospel or the complete truth, but what it is you're going to see an effective speed of around 80% more from the GTX 1650 to the 1660 Ti. That's why I think this processor is such a value. Because going from the 1660 Ti to say like the 2060 or the 2070 or 2080, yeah, you're going to see a lot of boosted performance, but you're also going to see a big hike in price. So this is the biggest jump you can make. If you're deciding between the 1650 and the GTX 1660 Ti, make that investment and just up a little bit higher because it gives you so much more performance. All right, the Asus TUF A15. This is a great laptop for anybody on a budget looking for a fast computer. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the heating issues, but as Hardware Canucks reviewed this laptop, they showed that it was not causing thermal throttling. So that means that the heating issues aren't hurting performance, though your laptop is getting warmer than a lot of people prefer. Hardware Unbox also did a review on this one and talked about the frustrations in the ventilation, how it wasn't properly breathing and the structure of the cooling system wasn't set up properly. I'm not that deep into the weeds. I simply want to recommend laptops that I feel are a good value for the performance, and this is one of those laptops. If you're concerned about the heating issues, then maybe the Lenovo Legion 5 or the Asus Zephyrus G14, which I'll come up in just a few minutes in this video. But you really have to consider your use case, your budget, of course. I mean, this is a value of a laptop. It comes with the newest Ryzen 7 4800H with a GTX 1660 Ti and 16 gigs of RAM for all at around $1,100. That is a steal in my opinion. You're going to suffer with color accuracy and the heating, but it's not to the point where you're getting a bad laptop. It's still going to have good performance. All right, moving forward on this one. Next, we have the Asus Zephyrus G14. This one has much better cooling. So if cooling is something that's really important to you, and it also has a higher core processor. So let's look at this real quick. We have 2.9 gigahertz on the base clock, 4.2 on the turbo. We have 3.0 on the base, 4.3 on the turbo. So what this means is that the biggest performance increase is not going to be in the export times or the playback. It's going to be in multitasking. That's one thing that people often really overlook, is that when you go from a 7 to a 9, you're not always getting more performance in a singular program, in a singular core, because you're getting more performance in the multi-core aspect. So the Ryzen 9 is better multi-core, so you can do better multitasking. So, working in Photoshop, Premiere Pro, and After Effects all at the same time will be a smoother experience on the Ryzen 9 than it would be the Ryzen 7. I hope you're enjoying this narrative as we're going through it. I'm trying to make sure I'm explaining the GPU, CPU combinations well enough. All right, next is the RTX 2060 Max-Q. That's what comes in this laptop. And I want to point something out. You're having about a $500 increase in price for only a 10% increase in performance for this RTX 2060 Max-Q. On the average user benchmarks, that's what we are seeing. So you could save $500 and get this laptop, the Asus TUF A15. You're going to have slightly less multitasking, but you're only going to see about a 10% decrease in performance for video editing. So definitely keep these things in mind. Make sure you're picking the laptop for the use case and the performance that it actually yields. This one does have much better color accuracy though, so if color accuracy is important to you, then this will be the pick, in my opinion, between these two Asus machines. Next up is the Razer Blade 15 base model. I like this laptop because it has the latest i7 10th gen 750H processor, the 1660 Ti, 16 gigs of RAM, and pretty solid color accuracy. Also, this is, in my opinion, the MacBook Pro of Windows laptops. It has a fantastic build quality and aesthetic. So you really can't go wrong with the Razer Blade if you're looking for a durable, fast, thin, and light laptop with just great aesthetics. So I can't really say a ton about that one besides it's got a great CPU, GPU combo, and it would work well for your 4K video editing situation. Next is the Acer Predator Helios 300. Again, an i7 9750H, a common thread you're going to see throughout this category, as well as the GTX 1660 Ti. Pretty solid color accuracy, about the same as the Razer Blade, though I will say the Razer Blade gets my love for build quality and aesthetic, though it's still a great looking laptop, all aluminum, solid job from Acer. Next, one of my favorite laptops, again, is the Gigabyte Aero 15 for its color accuracy and the build. I had this laptop in the studio recently, and it really impressed me. For a gaming laptop, I thought, wow, this laptop's very well put together. Not quite as impressive, in my opinion, as the Razer Blade. Still think that one is just incredible, but this is still great, and it has 100% sRGB as well as 100% Adobe RGB, which is Pantone certified. So that's really a big bonus because you know it's going to come out of the factory with great Pantone certification, and it's going to be color accurate from the get-go. Next is the Dell XPS 15, the 9500. We're seeing more of these come available on the market. Not a lot of choices yet. There is one in the description below from Amazon that you can check out. I think it's got like 32 gigs of RAM, and it's really maxed out, so it's a little bit more expensive. But as more come on to Amazon and B&H and Newegg, I'm going to update those links, and so you'll have more options down below. This laptop comes with the i7 10-8750H, the GTX 1650 Ti, so that's a Ti version of the 1650. I haven't seen that in any other laptops yet, but that's going to fall between the 1650 and the 1660 Ti, so you're probably going to see anywhere from a 20 to 15 to 30% increase in performance between the 1650 and the 1650 Ti. 100% color accuracy of sRGB and Adobe RGB, so really solid laptop and a great CPU GPU combination here. All right, next is the MacBook Pro. This has the i7 9750H along with the AMD Radeon Pro 5300M. Now this is a 4 gig GPU. This would be in relation to the GTX 1650. If you want to upgrade to something of the equal performance to say the 1660 Ti, then you're going to get the 6 gig model of the GPU. So if you want to slightly increase your rendering and playback performance, definitely look at the 6 gig version of the Radeon Pro whenever you make the upgrade on Apple or Amazon or wherever you decide to buy it. B&H, I don't know. I have links, like I said, in the description below if you want to support the channel and buy through there. Of course, I'm always super grateful for that when you guys purchase through those links. This is one of my favorite laptops because it is just so simple and straightforward, and the build quality is incredible. I doubted Apple for a long time as they put out the butterfly keyboard, but once they brought out this new model, I got my hands on it and I really enjoyed it. So, I mean, it's the Apple MacBook Pro. It's like apples to oranges comparison. Either you get a Windows or you get a Mac. No other Mac. So let's keep moving forward here. 6K video editing projects. All right, so this is going to be the Asus ProArt StudioBook Pro 17. Now, this is going to be for big motion graphic projects, 6K footage, really heavy graphic rendering to the screen, really heavy GPU intensive stuff because higher resolutions, more motion design, 3D animation, so on and so forth. That would be the use case for these laptops. So Asus ProArt StudioBook Pro 17. Comes with the Xeon E2276M. This is a 6-core, 12-thread, more of a workstation processor. This gets out of their Core series. It's got a 2.8 base clock and a 4.7 turbo clock, so really good performance. Let me pull that up on the screen so you can see it. Really good performance, and it's paired up with the Quadro RTX 3000. And this is, again, more of a workstation GPU to the workstation CPU. So I think this pairing is really well done from Asus. 32 gigs of RAM, 2 terabytes of SSD, and pretty solid color accuracy. Not the best, but good, really, really good color accuracy. I would think for the price that this would have 100% across the board, being that it's about a $3,000 system, but they put a lot of money into that processor and GPU, so that's what we get. Next is the Apple MacBook Pro 16 with the upgraded 6-core 12-thread i9-9980H, as well as the AMD Radeon Pro 5500M. That's that upgraded GPU I was talking about. I believe that is the 8 gig version, though, in this laptop. It also has 64 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte of SSD, and 100% color accuracy across the board. That thing is a 6K motion design, and definitely 4K beast. So if you're looking for something Apple, that's actually not that insane of a price point for an Apple product of this power. Next is the Razer Blade Studio Edition. I've seen this laptop at CES. It's a great MacBook Pro comparison, although I will say between the MacBook Pro and this, I would personally lean towards the MacBook Pro at this price point because it has the i7-9750H versus the i9 in the MacBook Pro, which will give you better multitasking. This does have the RTX 5000, which is that really, really optimized workstation GPU, although it's not paired with a workstation CPU. So I don't think this is the absolute best pairing, but it is going to render and have really great playback of 6K footage, motion design, things along that nature, and has a 4K OLED panel and 100% sRGB and Adobe RGB color accuracy. So it's still a great laptop if you want to go for Windows. I think this is a great laptop, but if it was me personally, I would lean towards the MacBook Pro. Next is the Gigabyte Aero 15 maxed out. This is the i9-10980HK paired up with the RTX 2080 Supermax Q. This is a great GPU CPU pairing. You can get it from 32 to 64 gigs of RAM, and this one is, again, that same Pantone certified 100% sRGB and 100% Adobe RGB color accuracy. This is the most expensive laptop in the lineup at $4,200, but if you're somebody who's going to be doing some serious video editing, this is honestly the most powerful laptop in the whole lineup. Those are the top recommendations for video editing GPU CPU combinations. I hope you've enjoyed that video. Again, links in the description below if you want to make a purchase. And if you have any questions about these pairings or you want to see me make some other videos that would be super helpful to you, the comment section is where I get a lot of video ideas as well as just things that bounce around in my head. So please comment below and let me know how you would like to see the channel continue to grow and how I can serve y'all better. I'm Benji Kaiser, and I'll see you guys on the next episode of Don't Tech With Me.